Hey everyone, and the Summer Games Fest just ended and they dropped a surprise teaser trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth which shows full combat, gameplay and story cutscenes, so let's get straight into it.
Lockhart QT.
So, starting off, the trailer starts off with Sector 2 Shinra news footage of a massive tornado going through Sector 0, 1 and 2. This is basically the aftermath of the first game, but this is really interesting because we see in this cinematic, which is probably how the game is going to start, Barret, Tifa and Red 13 being carried off into Shinra ambulances, essentially being put into what we can see as body bags. Now, this could be one of two things. This could either be a cover-up by Shinra using fake bodies to keep the population of Midgar calm, to show that yes, we've killed Avalanche, and to basically fake their deaths as propaganda. Or this could actually take place in an alternate universe, basically the one that we saw in the after credits scene from Final Fantasy VII Remake with Zack being alive. We then see the party in a pseudo-open world setting exploring a bit. Now, I've covered in previous videos and speculation if the game was going to use obviously open world or if it was going to be linear with sort of more open areas, because if you guys remember, the original game is fully open world. You can go to each area on the world map. But this is now a confirmation that the game will be semi-open world with more basically linear open areas to explore, but the game will still be linear. We also see the party wandering around forests and fields, exploring lots of forests. This could essentially be where the gang meet up with YUFFIE. More on her later, but in the original game, although you can meet YUFFIE normally, you can actually meet her way earlier on in the game if you basically have a random encounter with her in a forest. So they may be sort of replicating that here, and it'd be really interesting to see if it's optional as well. We then see some more gameplay of the open world, and we see the Chocobo farm, most likely where we'll be able to raise and catch Chocobo, needed for essentially exploring certain areas. We then see a later shot of the gang all riding Chocobos as a essentially confirmation of that, because let's be honest, it's not a Final Fantasy game without riding Chocobo. During this segment, we hear Tifa talking to Aerith about the fact that Cloud wasn't there during the Nibelheim incident 5 years ago, alluding to the fact that we could be seeing more essentially of Cloud's fragmented memory. I'm not going to spoil it for those who don't want to know what happens in that regard, but it's nice to see that they are paying that off in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We then see the observatory in Cosmo Canyon where we meet Bugenhagen, who will essentially explain the live stream and what the main party's quest is essentially going from here. We don't see Kate Sith, so again, I don't know if he's going to be at this part of the game. I'm hoping he is, and I'm hoping he is fully playable. But we also see the cave of Guy, I don't know how you guys pronounce it, but it's essentially the cave underneath Cosmo Canyon, and I can't wait to explore Cosmo Canyon. It's one of my favourite locations. I'm so excited. We then see the gang taking a respite in Calm, which will most likely be essentially Cloud explaining who Sephiroth is, what his goal is, and the Nibelheim incident in the flashback at the start of Rebirth. I think that we are going to get the original version of the flashback first, and then obviously see the proper version of it later on, or in the third game. We then see Red 13 and Barret fighting a new enemy, and we get to see gameplay of Red 13 at last, because if you guys remember in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Red 13 was not playable. Although he was a party member, he was not playable. But during the combat we can see that he'll have a vengeance mode in the command deck, which is super interesting. We then get to see Elena, who is the new Turk, and who is one of the many Turks that we meet throughout the story, and we actually get to see her in more of a boss battle setting alongside the other Turks, just again a confirmation that she is returning and that we'll be able to fight her, because again she is one of the fan favourite Turks. I do think she has some funny moments in the original, so hopefully they're translated well here. We then get to see Junon, which is where the gang will essentially be trying to get into disguise and sneak into to essentially thwart Shinra and their operations, as well as fight some cool bosses and whatnot, if I remember from the original game. Hopefully we get to redo the mini game where Cloud essentially has to act like a soldier to sneak in, where he's in the full uniform and everything, and it's where they have the parade. And I would just love if they brought that back, because it's similar to the cross-dressing scene from Remake. If they could bring back some of the more silly stuff, as well as, you know, keeping it a bit more serious, I think they've done well in terms of fan service. But also, if you look at this shot of Junon, we can also potentially see the High Wind up at the top left, so hopefully the High Wind is returning here. Throughout the trailer, we also see some new basic attacks, as well as some just new command attacks for all characters really, as well as new specials for Aerith, Cloud, Tifa and Red 13. I imagine Barrett, Yuffie and potentially Cait Sith, if he is in this game, will also get some as well. We then see, obviously Tifa and Aerith in the shot, but we also see Yuffie teaming up with Red 13 for a team attack, and we see a slight snippet of Yuffie gameplay. Obviously, we've already seen her in the sort of prologue DLC for Remake, and obviously we already knew that going into this that she was going to be in this, so it is nice to see, again, just a confirmation that Yuffie and Red 13 are definitely playable and definitely party members. We then see Yuffie fleeing from Sephiroth surrounded by purple mist, and then we see a version of Jenova in which they will have to fight during a boss battle, and we essentially hear Sephiroth explaining some of the backstory of Jenova, and it's where he's most likely going to meet us. I imagine this will either be aboard the ship going towards Costa del, I think it's either to Costa del Sol or from Costa del Sol, either that or this is Junon. Again, we'll have to wait and see. And lastly, we see Cloud in robes chanting reunion, and then we see part of the Nibelheim incident flashback where Tifa's dad is killed and Sephiroth attacks her. Again, more of a confirmation that we are getting that flashback. I mean, we already saw it in the sort of reveal trailer for Rebirth that we're definitely getting at least part of the flashback. So again, I think it is just going to be a case of, like in Final Fantasy VII, we see the flashback here, we actually get to play through it with Sephiroth in the party, and then later on we see the essentially true events of what actually happened. Whether or not we get to play through it with Zack, again, we're going to have to wait and see. And finally, we got confirmation that the game has now been delayed to 2024, which is quite sad. But more baffling to me is that the game has now been confirmed to be on 2 discs. Now, this can either mean one of 2 things, and if it is clarified up, I'll put something in the description or the comments. It's either going to be 2 discs in terms of like one's a data disc and one's a play disc, or it's 2 play discs, which is really interesting because that says to me that this game is going to be massive because they've had to essentially squeeze it on 2 Blu-rays. So that's really interesting to me. How big is this game? We're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, I know this is kind of a rushed video. I just wanted to get this out because obviously the trailer has just dropped and it was sort of a sudden announcement. I was in the middle of cooking whilst the trailer dropped, so thank you very much for that. But anyway guys, for more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.